necessarily contradict my reason. Most likely would be impose silence on my reason. When it goes on, it mentions...
No, that isn't the quote. That's him. The quote is what...
Right.
Yeah, he quotes someone previously.
Yeah, I'm just quoting those.
Okay, quoting those.
But when it goes on, it says that unrefuted argument would appear in the most secret recesses of my heart, be transformed into disquieting doubts. Those doubts themselves would resolve themselves into childlike prayers, into fervent supplications for illumination. So I think he's trying to say that, yeah, I can take some things on faith that, like if God's will contradicted what I know to be reasonable, I can say, okay, I'll take your word, God. But it doesn't mean that the reason's still there. The reason's still saying, well, there is a reason, but I'm asking for guidance because, frankly, I don't get it.
Yeah, I say that delicate balance is there. He is still faithful to, he was going to doubt, he's going to fervently pray and things, but he's still a Jew. He's trying to be a reasonable one, put it that way. And so I think that's what you're saying. The next, I got to move along because we want to finish this tonight if we can, so we can move on to some other things next time. Next page or two, he says something like, Christianity, as you know, is built upon Judaism and would therefore collapse along with it. I'm not sure if that's true, and these are all statements that need a lot of proof. He says further along, a couple of pages further along, I've never publicly contested the Christian religion, and I shall never enter into a dispute with its true adherents. And I do not agree that the Jews possess secret information in unknown documents like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion or whatever, which throw a different light on historical facts. He said, well, we do now have the scrolls which weren't known there, but anyway, he says people thought they were harboring secret. There's no secret documents. Finally, he gets to another big point here. I don't know if we can get the right page. He's arguing with a guy named Mr. Marshall. I guess Marshall was the one who he was quoting back here or something earlier. Nevertheless, I must do justice to his penetrating insight. That is Marshall's. When he saw what he saw was, at least in part, not wrong. It is true that I recognize no eternal verities. Do you see where we are? No eternal truths except those which can not only be comprehended by the human intellect, but can also be demonstrated and verified by man's reason. So he's saying, there is a contradiction here. I do not recognize eternal truths except those that can be verified by intellect and reason. However, it's a misconception of Judaism if Marshall thinks I cannot adopt the position I'm taking without deviating from the religion of my fathers. And Marshall saying, look, your religion is totally unreasonable anyway, stop the baloney, convert to Christianity, or, stop making believe that, you don't have a problem here. Contradiction between reason and faith, basically. On the contrary, I consider this view an essential aspect of the Jewish religion, that is, using one's reason. And he may be stretching things here. And I believe that this teaching represents, but we're talking about his view, not ours. We want to learn his view. That's the whole point of this. I consider this view an essential part of the Jewish religion, that it's reasonable, he says. And believe this teaching represents one of its characteristics. Here he is being a little unkind to Christianity. He's trying to say Judaism is more reasonable than Christianity. You'll have to debate that. I don't want to get into that thing, but he's basically saying that. To sum up in one sentence, I believe Judaism knows nothing of a revealed religion in the sense in which Christians define the term. This is really, now he's getting into some important thing. Jews, Israelites, possess a divine or supernatural legislation, if you want to call it that. And this is how he puts it. Judaism is just a legislation, like a constitution. It's nothing more than that. Laws, commandments, statutes, rules of conduct, instruction in God's will and in what they are to do to attain temporal and eternal salvation. Moses, in a miraculous and supernatural way, revealed to them these laws and commandments, but not the dogmas, propositions concerning salvation or self-evident reasons. So Moses just gave them the laws and the commandments, but not supernatural theological principles concerning salvation. These the Lord reveals to us, and all men, and all times, through nature, but not through the spoken and the written word. Now that's really a very pithy, I don't know if you guys got a book in front of you, but that's pretty pithy, don't you think, in terms of his arguments. I don't necessarily agree with him, but in terms of his arguments, he's saying, Judaism, that's what would be his argument. Look, we're harmless, you folks. Judaism is just a system of laws. We don't have a revealed theology. And to some extent that is true. Islam is the same. Although Islam is much more Jewish than it is Christian. I've always said Islam is cosmopolitan Judaism. Judaism taken beyond the borders of one nation. But on the other hand, there is a theology in Islam too, to some extent. I'm afraid many, as you say, people say you have 2 or 3 Jews in a room and they wouldn't even agree on any point between them, and there's some truth to that. I'm afraid many readers will once again find my view shocking. People have usually paid little attention to this distinction. Supernatural legislation, that means revealed, divine, not natural, not reasonable, has been mistaken for supernatural revelation. That's a really interesting little, these are very, how should we put it, dialectical, sort of rhetorical attempts to argue in a polemical way for his position of religion. People have spoken of Judaism as if it were merely an early revelation of these religious doctrines and tenets which are necessary for all of man's salvation. So I've got to be more specific here. Those principles which are independent of time and remain forever unchanged are eternal truths. They are either necessary, getting very reasonable if we can call that, as such unchangeable or contingent. In other words, they are necessary truths, true in and of themselves, or they're dependent, contingent on something else in a logical way. That is, either they are permanent, he's getting very Aristotelian here. They are permanently grounded in their essence, blah, 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 blah. In other words, necessary as well as contingent truths have common source. The former originate in reason. The necessary ones are the reasonable ones. The latter, the will of God. So the contingent ones, he says, are the will of God. It's really difficult here. Necessary truths cannot be changed even by God himself. Einstein's physics can't be changed by God. That's a necessary truth. Even he, notwithstanding his omnipotence, cannot suspend the rules. His unchangeable reason. Contingent truths, however, are subject to the will of God. They are changeable in time and place. They are temporal, historical truths. Events which occurred once and may never occur again. The birth of Jesus, the revelation of Moses, he's talking about, are principles which by the process of cause and effect become accepted as truths at a certain point in time and space. They can be considered true only in relation to that particular point in time and space. All historical truths, he said, fall into that category. Necessary truths are based on